Hello, Matthew.
Hi, how are you, Ken?
Not, I've been better, but not too bad.
I'm sorry to hear.
Uh,
It's a privilege to speak with you. I really appreciate you taking the time for it.
oh, it's very kind. Well, it's nice to meet you too.
I mean, your body of work is so important to me and culturally. So it's great. Yet again, you've made a really moving and illuminating film with The Old Oak. I've heard, I think everyone, Rebecca, Paul, and you all say that it felt like there was more that needed to be told with this the Northeast stories. Uh,
Yeah.
have you felt that before in your career that you there was more you needed to address, and why was that the case this time?
Um, well, I think it's always the case. I mean, I think in every film, and Paul and I, and particularly Paul, because he confronts a blank sheet of paper, really, is that you try to find a simple story with maybe half a dozen characters that contains a contradiction or a conflict. And as you unravel it and get to know the people, you shine a light right to the heart of the whole background, the whole infrastructure, the whole social background that you want to say something about. So it's not just about the people. They are true to themselves, and they're all individuals, but nevertheless their conflict and their story and the resolution of it says something about the much wider issue. So that's always the aim. I mean, apart from one or two of the bigger ones that had a major, international conflict. Um, so of course there are always whole areas of the subject that you think, well, there's another story here and there's another story there. And I think what was particular about The Old Oak was that this was one small group centered around a pub in a village that had been abandoned, the mining community abandoned, and two communities thrown together, and could they live together? Um, and there are so many issues. I mean, there's the neglect of those communities that led to leads to the far right, and you could do a whole film about that. And you could do obviously many films about the Syrians, and we were just touching on their plight and their trauma, um, the role of the West and the international other countries in allowing that conflict to happen, or allowing that traumas to be inflicted on millions of people, as we're seeing now in Gaza. So I mean that there's always many elements that you could pick on. Finding just the right one is always a big question for us.
Yeah, and I completely understand what you're saying. It's the film does sort of speak with the other two films in a way, of telling a story of how we got to this point systematically, politically. Uh, would you, I mean, is this officially a trilogy for you? And what do the three films together address in your sense?
Well, we did Daniel Blake about the cruelty of the social security system, where people are denied the rights they've contributed to and the payment they're entitled to by a bureaucratic system that sets traps for them. Um, and and then we thought, well, there's a matching one about work. These are people without work. There's a matching one about the gig economy and the insecurity of work. And then you can't be up there and notice that it's an old industrial area built on three big industries that have now all gone. Um, uh, Shipbuilding, coal mining, and steel, all gone. Nothing put in its place. So, in a way, looking back, they're about the consequences of neoliberalism, the consequences of an economic system that has, began with Reaganomics and Thatcher and the Chicago School and the economists that said capitalism must be unfettered because that'll be efficient, and the human consequences are a conscious cruelty against those who sell their labor, weakening them, impoverishing them, leaving them vulnerable, weakened unions, and so on. And these are the human consequences of that shift in the 80s. And Thatcher was the one who carried the torch in Britain, and it spread across Europe. And neoliberalism is now is intensifying the damage to the climate catastrophe and environmental damage, is causing poverty, hunger, starvation in Britain, never mind elsewhere that we read of in the world. And these are the consequences. This is the harvest from Reaganomics, Thatcherism, neoliberalism, gross wealth for a few, and exploitation, and sometimes extreme poverty for many.
Yeah, it's a beautiful portrait. I mean, a heartbreaking portrait, but and to touch on this idea of feeling like there's more to be said, there have been talks. I'm not sure if you've officially confirmed you would like to retire. Do you feel like you will always want to say more? Do you feel like you can't, you're not completely going to step away, or you're just going to see it where you go?
Well, it's you hate saying never, because making film is such a privilege, but the reality of the years catches up with you. I mean, I don't direct from behind a monitor. You're on your feet 12 hours a day or more. You've got to know everyone's name, even people who just we try not to call them extras or walk-ons, but the industry calls them that. But you need to know their names, so they feel part of it and welcome in. And there's no social hierarchy, and we all there has to be a real sense of unity and friendship and ease and enjoyment and a laughter, even in the darkest scenes. That we have to create a culture in which everyone feels safe, and you never bring conflict onto the sets, never, ever, ever, because you want people to be vulnerable, and they can only be vulnerable if they're confident, and they know whatever they do, they can't make a mistake, and generating that is you're on your toes all the time, really, and making certain everyone's okay, as well as where do we put the camera and what do I need to say just to trigger the right response, and how you develop it. So it's the emotional commitment is pretty high, and to do that, they're generous now. They give me 5 days a week, not 6, but to do that, we shoot for 6 weeks usually. To do that for that length of time and the lead up is, the last one was really knackering. This one. And I'm not sure I could get around the course again, to be honest.
Well, it's incredible, this retrospective they're having. Looking back on, starting in the 60s, so many different films addressing so many different political contexts. Do you feel like your understanding of art's power as a socio-political tool has changed at all, or do you still view film the same, as serving the same sort of function as you did in the 60s?
Yeah, it crystallizes really over the years. I knew the principle of what would be censored on television in broadcasting back in the 60s, as a political principle, that in our country, the BBC is an arm of the state, and commercial television follows suit. And that as a principle. But having lived through the 80s and having our work censored over and over again, just taken, not allowed to be broadcast. That brought it into the theory became reality then, that principle was demonstrated in front of our eyes. The old adage again we learned in the 60s that the ruling class will survive any crisis as long as the working class pays the price. Learned that in the 60s, demonstrated in the 80s and every decade since, until now we have many 140,000 children without a home, nowhere to live. The rise in children, families needing gifts of food or they will starve. I mean, I think there were 500,000 kids in that list, and parents and adults, and this is extraordinary. I mean, I was brought up after the war, and I born before the Second World War, lived through it, and was I was 9 when I remember the post-war period. Rationing, we didn't have much money. Nobody starved. There were no charity food banks. Everybody had somewhere to live, And now one of the richest countries in the world. Hunger, starvation, homelessness, it's rife, So it demonstrates that they will defend the economic system of profit being the only motive for production or public services, and no matter what the human cost.
Yeah,
it's learn that, and the aesthetics developed as well. Really, they gradually, because I mean that we talk about politics, but the aesthetics of filmmaking are what excites you, as well as the ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned hope being a sort of important part of the Old Oak, or how we sort of create hope collectively. But then piggybacking off what you were just saying, final question here. Do you feel like there is hope? Younger generations seem to be speaking out against Israel and supporting Palestine in a way that I don't think we've seen more fervently in a long time. More people are attacking capitalism and the idea of profit over everything. But at the same time, what you're saying is still the case. We're rich and people are hungry. So is it getting better for you? Are you hopeful?
Well, people will always resist, and that's one of the things that people say in the Old Oak. People say themselves, solidarity is our greatest weapon. If we let them divide us by racism, by blaming immigrants, by fighting amongst ourselves, that's their weapon. Our weapon is solidarity, real unity, understanding you have common interests. It's the same people that impose 0-hour contracts or no security of work, lower wages, and as it is the same people that do that for their profit that demand the more use of fossil fuels, because that's where they make money too. It's the same. It's two symptoms of the same malaise, of the same problem, and so learning to link those struggles is very important. In the end, it'll come down to organization, principles, and not being misled, trusting the evidence of your own eyes and experience, and not being misled by the propaganda. And I know, obviously in the States, there's a big the dangle of racism and disunity is dangled very hard by the right of the coming election. And we have two neoliberal parties now. We don't have a party of the left anymore. So it's on the surface the political odds are against us, but people are living the reality and they are resisting. So that's the hope.
Yeah. We have to save ourselves in a way and not wait for the politicians to do it. But
absolutely. They're bought. They're bought men and women.
Yeah. You don't know how much of honor it is. I really appreciate your time.
It's good to talk to you, Matthew, too. Where are you speaking from?
Currently I'm in Virginia. right now.
Oh, right. Right.
Roanoke, Virginia. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And you're in New York, or are you?
No, I'm in the West Country in England.
Oh, okay. Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Are you coming for the film, the 21 film series, by the way?
I've been told I shouldn't travel quite as much, really.
Okay.
So I'm not going to make it. Sadly, I mean, it's a real privilege. It's a real honor for the retrospective, and I'm really sorry not to be there. I'd love to be there, but I just
You
need
are
a
through your films, definitely, sir.
sorry.
You are through your films, definitely.
Yeah, well, that's kind of you. But no, I'd love to be magicked across,
Yeah.
wake up and be there, and then. But the actual anyway, I've just been told I've got to stop
Yeah.
traveling.
Well, I will keep your health in my thoughts, and really appreciate you.